Hello and welcome back to Pilates with Marilyn. My name is Marilyn Harder, Pilates instructor and Pilates master trainer. Welcome to episode 8 of season 2, The Power of Letting Go. So we are going to focus in on our trigger point release. So you'll need a trigger point ball, tennis ball, lacrosse ball, something to that nature, and our grid roller. If you're interested in making a homemade grid roller, check into the intro commercial for this episode for all the details on how to make one. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and anchor one of your heels onto the floor and bring the knuckle of the ball of the big toe side onto that trigger point ball. And I want you to make sure that you're really anchoring that heel down. And we're going to slowly start to pivot towards the pinky toe side, moving at about 1 inch a second, making sure that you're moving from the hip and not just the foot. So we want to move that whole leg in one single unit. And as you do, I want you to go slow and just start to connect with your breathing. Big in through the nose and exhale out the mouth. I want you to look down at your foot. Notice how the knuckles in between seem to stretch each time the ball passes through it, and just feel everything sort of melt like butter. If you're feeling any tension, just try and let it go. Try and let your leg be soft. Maybe give your shoulders a little roll. Good. Now on this next roll, I want you to notice if you're a little tighter in through one segment of the foot versus another. And then if you feel a really tight segment, I want you to pause there. Pause at the tight segment, spread your toes a little wider, see if you can feel everything kind of open up. And then I just want you to sink your body weight forward. We're just adding an extra stretch there. So this pattern that we're doing with our feet is also what we should be doing with our day. And that may not make sense to you right now, but it will in a moment. All right, so let's go ahead and move into the ball of the big toe side, and we're going to slowly roll on the inside arch towards the heel pocket. And I want you to just move really nice and slow. And let's talk about the power of letting go. So as we're releasing our fascia and muscle tissues, we also want to take a scan of our body. Are you holding tension patterns inside your body right now? Maybe not holding our breath, maybe not breathing as deeply, feeling the neck and shoulders tight. Check in with yourself. Where are you feeling things in your body? And see if you can let them go. All right, so let's go ahead and move into the middle part of that foot and roll along the center of the arch. Now sometimes, depending on what's going on with life, it's not as simple as just rolling our shoulders to let things go. There's that pervasive feeling of dread that sometimes sits like a rock in the pit of our stomach, or a tightening of the throat. Especially in this past year, I've had a lot of people who've never had any feelings of anxiety either feel very anxious all the time, like they're ramped up and like fight or flight 100% of the time, or they're lethargic and they're checking out because life just feels too much. And let's go ahead and move to that pinky toe side, and that's almost the shadow side of anxiety, where the body says, you know what, we're not even going to feel that, it's just too much. So don't ignore feelings of just real fatigue as not anxiety. It's still within that same family. All right, so now as we move back to that pinky toe side, we're going to go ahead and move that ball into that heel pocket. Spread our toes out nice and wide so that heel pocket is right in front of that calcaneus bone, right at that attachment point of the plantar fascia. And I want you to just try and lean forward and let go and just see if everything can sort of melt over that ball and release. Now I want it to be a point where you're not resisting it. And that's going to be a key concept, is not resisting things. I want you to see if you can just Succumb to it. Just let it go. Melt over it. Melt around it. That's where you're going to get that true and complete release. All right, now we're going to go ahead and move to the other side. All right, before we do, I just want you to take a couple quick calf raises and notice how much more solid and connected the foot we released feels. And let's go ahead and move to the other side. Anchoring that heel, feeling that knuckle on the ball, that big toe just sort of melt over the ball. We're going to slowly begin to pivot towards that pinky toe side and then slowly pivot back again. Letting each knuckle release as you pass through. Now, let's talk about resistance. Have you ever been in a situation, and maybe this is relevant to you now, where you feel like you're holding your breath nonstop? Where you feel like you're holding your breath nonstop, and life just seems to be coming at you, and you're in this constant state of just anticipating what the next move is going to be, trying to figure it out as a story in your head. That's resistance. So let's go ahead and find that sticky point again like we did on the other side. Spread the toes out nice and wide and just try and lean into it, feel everything melt away. So often in life, there is nothing that can be done. Things are just as they are. And we create this story in the experience of it that can just toss and turn our stomachs, keep us in this constant turmoil when the next step or the next issue is months away. I will tell you a personal story that in the economic boom and then crash of the early 2000s, 2010, I had an adjustable rate mortgage. So let's go ahead and move that ball to the big toe side and let's start to roll it to the heel pocket. And I sat in anxiety for almost 5 years on when that adjustable rate mortgage would take our mortgage to a place that we couldn't afford to pay. So instead of feeling blessed of our home, feeling blessed that I qualified for a mortgage, we had our own space and that we could afford it, I lived in this space of impending doom. That is resistance of life. That is creating a story based on what ifs. All right, so let's go ahead and continue to melt and release that away. And then we're gonna move to the middle part of our foot. And I'm sure as you're thinking, gosh, that seems like a lot of wasted time and energy. That's exactly what it is. So here is a first step mantra. When it comes, I'll deal with it. And you may feel resistance to that statement of, but you don't know. Correct, but also you don't know either. So sitting in that constant resistance, that constant fear of what could be, we are causing ourselves pain. So here is the next step. We'll deal with it when it comes. Let's move to the pinky toe side. Third step is attack what's attacking you. So what is it that you're afraid of? What is your very worst fear of it? Had someone come to me a month in when I was in anxiety and they said, what is your very worst fear? I would say my very worst fear is that the mortgage rate would go up, we wouldn't be able to afford our home, and we would lose it. And that was my very worst fear. But really, I was afraid of what I would do then. And that's what I was stuck at. So let's go ahead and come to that heel pocket. Right in front of that calcaneus bone, start to sink forward and let that foot melt. Just feel it release. So had I taken that exploration one step further and said, okay, so I've attacked what's attacking me. This is what I'm very first fear. So what happens then? What if I can't afford it? What is the very worst scenario there? Well, I had a good job. I had plenty of income. Very worst scenario was we lost the house and we got something new. And once you face the other side of a problem that seems impossible to solve because you don't want it, I did not want to lose my house, you don't want it, then, you know, you're able to really let it go. And because your mind and your body don't know the difference on whether you've actually experienced it or whether you've experienced it in your mind. So your stress level can fade away. All right, let's go ahead and step off of that ball. We're gonna do one more thing standing, and then we're gonna make our way to the floor. Okay, we're gonna release the inner thighs. We tend to hold emotions in our feet, our hips, and our shoulders, so that's where we're focusing today. So taking that grid roller, and it may feel odd, we're gonna release the upper inner tendons of the inner thighs. So we're gonna take that to the upper inner attachments here, all the way up to the top, as high as you can get it, you know, without intruding into your world. And I want you to try and relax. Now we wanna make sure that we're not arching our back trying to escape the sensation, but dropping the tailbone down and really feeling that release. So let's go back to not escaping the sensation. So often we'll just container and store our stress for another day rather than actually letting it go. So the process of going all the way through those stuck emotions, that stuck fear, going all the way to the end of it, like I just told you, we're able to let it go. If we say, oh, it's for another day, we put it in a container and we stick it away, it still niggles at us. It still makes noise, right? Okay, so now we're gonna slowly sway from right to left. And I just want you to feel how it gets into the upper inner thigh attachment. And then we're gonna slowly sway the other way. So we're trying to get as high as we can. The inner thigh musculature, although they're few and small, they're tough. So they're really tough and fibrous, so it takes a little bit to release them. That's true with our worst fears also, those things that seem to niggle at us day in and day out. All right, we're gonna go ahead and go one more side. And then come back to center, and we're gonna move that down to about 4 fingers above the knee. Find that little engagement that we did before where everything sort of releases and relaxes. So this is a great strategy for working with your children, grandchildren, children of people that you love. It is a really great strategy for helping them find early in life how to move through emotions. Attack what's attacking them. Get them to go all the way to the end. Okay, well, what's next? What if that does happen? What's the worst thing that could happen then? Until there's nothing left. And they go, okay, do you think we could handle all that together? Well, yeah, I do. Okay, I've got you. And we can move to the other side of it. So just in the way that you would address this to a child, if you're thinking, yes, I would totally see how I could do this. Let's sway from right to left, same as we did before, finding that nice fibrous attachment. Notice if there's a moment where it zings, it means it's too much pressure or we're too low. So you want to move a little higher. You can treat yourself the same. So giving yourself that time to explore that very worst case scenario. What is the very worst case? Often you may uncover an action point, something that you can actually do versus, hey, this is the way life is. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take this to the floor. Okay, now that we're to the floor, we're gonna be releasing our piriformis, gluteus medius, rotators of the hip. Now, if you have a very sensitive rotators of the hip, make your way onto the trigger point grid roller, and you're gonna come and sit sort of side saddle, leaning back, finding that tension point. You can do this in a chair as well. Back foot is anchored to the floor, bottom foot is splayed open in a released, relaxed fashion. And now if you need something a little deeper, you can take that trigger point ball and place it into that same space. So it is at the diagonal of the tailbone up towards that hip bone, sort of in that meat. We're gonna find that same side-seated position. And then I just want you to kind of move around, roll yourself forward, roll yourself back, move yourself up, move yourself down, find that space for you. Whew, that is where it is for me. And I think I'm gonna stick with that trigger point ball now. Okay, so bottom leg is fully relaxed and you're gonna clam it up towards the top leg. Using that inner thigh and just trying to relax. Whoo, that glute. Oh, that's tender. We tend to hold and store a lot of our emotions in our hips, shoulders, neck, feet. The place where we pound the pavement, right? Where it takes the most use and abuse from our bodies. So trigger point release, along with thinking about what is attacking me, can be a really emotional process. So allow yourself to have it. If emotions come up, let them go. If they were stored with pain, they will be released with pain. All right, so let's go ahead and release it. Whew, that's a tough one for me here. Extend that leg out. Once that leg is fully extended, we're gonna lift it up. Just coming into that glute just a bit more. And I want you to try and melt it. Are you resisting it? So in that process of attack what's attacking you, you find resolution at each step. A place where you go, okay, that's the way life is. Okay, that is how it would be, and that would be how I would deal with it. And when there is ultimate resolve of, okay, that is how, if it plays out that way, that is how it's going to be, and you feel at peace, that's when you know you have let it go. All right, so let's go ahead and try and dig that ball or that grid roller into the earth and just try and add a little bit of pivot cross friction to get deeper into that space. Whew, I am shaking, I don't know about you. And then we'll go ahead and move to the other side. All right, moving to the other side, same thing, grid roller or the trigger point ball. Let's find that tender space. It's beginning to look a little bit like spring. Some of the cherry blossoms are starting to fall or get blown out of the trees, really. Back foot is anchored, finding that space on the glute. You can move forward and back. There it is for me. You just kind of have to explore. And then butterfly that bottom knee up. So now once you've attacked what's attacking you, it is time to explore. What else do you feel in your body? Where else do you feel it? Do you feel open and clear? Or is there something else that you're feeling? And often we may feel this anxiety because we're sitting in our head and we haven't dropped into our body. And so if you're feeling anxiety, imagine what you're anxious about. Just bring it to your mind's eye. What's the first thing that pops up? And then fully experience it. Try and feel every iteration of that emotion. Try and really allow it to wash over you. And when you do, chances are something will show up in your body. And you can take yourself through that process. Or if it's so overwhelming you can't really move through it, or there's nothing to move through because it's from the past and not anticipation of the future, extend that bottom leg. Let yourself sit into that space in your body. Bring all of your mind's eye to that moment, all of your mind's eye to the space in which you're feeling it. Imagine yourself get really small and sink into it. What does it feel like? Just sit there and stay there. Eventually, things start to dissipate and disappear. And we'll go ahead and go one more. Let's go ahead and bend those legs in, and we're gonna pivot on that ball. Now, if on your own those things are not disappearing, that's because something is really stuck. You've blocked it, you've resisted it, you've created a boundary around it, and often it's something you can't get through by yourself. We have an incredible spiritual advisor with Corporate Hippie Connection that does somatic renewal, Ingrid Turner, and she guides you through this process. It's incredible, worth your investment if you do feel stuck. All right, so let's go ahead and come off of it. So next we're going to release the hip flexor, which is right in front of that leg. And so we're gonna come in the diagonal between your belly button and your hip bone, place that ball right in between. I like to hug mine a little bit closer to that hip bone, close to that iliacus. So we're gonna make our way into the prone position, which means laying on our belly. So once you lay on down, I just want you to allow your body to relax there. I like to place my hands underneath my head and just let things go. And this is where I create a little traction. So I flex my foot, or I point my foot, attach it to the earth, and flex it to create a little traction in through the hip joint, a little space for my low back, and then let things go. Now, if that causes any pain or discomfort, don't do it. Okay, this may be good for you, and you're feeling a lot of release. If you don't, try and press your pubic bone towards the floor. Maybe you move the ball down just a hair until you go, oh yeah, that's the spot. For me, that's the spot. All right, coming to the forearms. If you need a little bit more, we're gonna pull the elbows towards the hips and just feel that ball sink into that space. Just let things go. Now really lengthen that leg, and it's my right leg right now, and I'm gonna engage the glute to lift it up and then lower it down. Make sure that your shoulders are back and down and everything is loosened and released. We're gonna do that one more time. And then lower ourselves back down. Let's move that ball towards the left side. If you feel like you need a second pass on that right, go ahead and pause, stop, do a second pass. This is one that I do fairly regularly. And do make sure that you do the right before the left, because it also helps stimulate the ascending and descending colons and allowing for release there as well. Okay, so as before, you can just sink here, or you can press that pubic bone forward, find that release. If it feels good, you can go ahead and come up onto your forearms, adding some additional pressure. Elbows pull towards the hips, and then we'll engage that glute to lift and lower, releasing through. And then we'll go one more. And then release it back. All right, if anything built up into your low back, let's just find a nice wide knee, child's pose, and just let things go. Just walk your hands out. I like to take a good deep breath. Don't think about anything. Just let things release. See if you can take that breath into that back body a little deeper. Drop that head down. And then we'll stack back up. All right, so I said we tend to hold a lot of our emotions in our feet, our hips, and our shoulders. So last but not least, we're gonna get to those shoulders today. This is such a freedom of seated position for my hips right now. All right, so I want to start with just an exploration of motion with the shoulders, and I want you just to take a little backstroke, arm back. Just notice what things feel like before we begin. All right, that's gonna be our baseline. We're gonna take that trigger point ball and we're gonna find the pec minor. So the way we find it is if you make a little bicep curl, there should be a muscle that pops up right here. And you can feel around for it. It's just ligamentary tissue and musculature, and you kind of wanna hook underneath it. That's where we're gonna place that ball. So I'm using it with my opposite hand, hugging the inside hand, and I'm gonna do a little chicken wing. So we're just pivoting that ball into that space. So we wanna soften pec minor. This gets really tight, even though it sometimes is weak when we sit in improper posture throughout the day. All of us that are at the computers all day long, rounding those shoulders forward, driving with our phones or our iPads, this is really going to be an epidemic in postural issues. So really pay attention, memorize this one, and do this one again. All right, so now we're gonna find that place where it feels most special to you. For me, my elbow's about this high, and we're gonna draw that elbow back, drawing your shoulder blade towards your spine, push that ball in, and we're gonna roll it forward. Now, if you've let something go in this process and your mind's still racing, check in with your body. Find your breath and check in. And let's move it to the other side. Same thing, finding that space, placing the ball, one hand on top. We're gonna roll it back, hook it through, or sorry, we're gonna pivot, chicken wing. The process of doing trigger point release also moves us into our parasympathetic nervous system. So really that's rest and digest rather than fight or flight. So trigger point release really takes us into that meditative, zoned out, maybe our brain is sort of loopy-doopy, mine, and it's a really great place to let go from. So find that special space, draw our shoulder back and down, hook into that space and roll forward. It allows all the noise of our feelings of just needing to go, 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 or life is being go, 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 or it's just so much, drops us into our bodies and allows us to scan and release. All right, we're gonna set that trigger point ball down and I want you to check in with mobility. For me, everything feels so much more free. That right one still has a sticky spot. So we're going into the lat release to finish us out today. So lat release, we're gonna come down onto our side, place that grid roller just in line with the lower tip of the shoulder blade. And then we're gonna slightly roll back or forward until you feel like, oh yeah, that's where it hurts for me. It's often slightly rolled back is where I feel it the most. So give yourself that space for you. It's sometimes odd to have your head hanging out here in space, so you can turn it to look towards the floor, or I like to use my top hand to support my head and just let my neck go. Your bottom hand palms up towards the ceiling, your legs are gonna be your locomotion. So we're gonna curl those heels towards the glutes and allow that grid roller to roll about 2 inches towards the armpit and press it away. Good, you've got it. Let's go ahead and do that again. Find that most special spot, pause and hold, float that hand up. We're gonna sweep it forward and sweep it back. It's gonna create some of that cross friction and release. Let your neck go. And then let's go ahead and move it down. So we're gonna adjust it just up about 1 inch or so. And we are going to release that upper inch. Okay, so now we placed it, palms up towards the ceiling. I like to walk my heels out just a little bit, and we're gonna roll towards that armpit and press it away. One more. Find that special spot, palm flips up, so let's sweep it forward and sweep it back. And we'll do it one more time. And then we'll move to the other side. Before we do our final check, see how things feel. All right, laying down in line, making sure that that lower tip of that shoulder blade is in line with that trigger point grid roller, and you can roll it forward or back. Support the top of your head, and we're going to curl our heels towards our glutes, sliding up 2 inches and press it away. You got it. Just let things go. Oh, this feels magical and wonderful on this right side. Find the most special spot, palm flips up towards the ceiling. We're gonna sweep it forward and sweep it back. And we'll go one more, sweep it forward and back. And we'll do our last and final spot, moving up just a little bit higher. Move our feet out a little bit lower, and we're gonna roll towards the axial crease, which is that armpit, and rolling back. And I think I need to be slightly more forward on this side. That's where the tension seems to be. Again, I like to close my eyes and just check in with my body. Hold it there, sweep forward, sweep back. One more. And then we'll go ahead and come on up. We're gonna give ourselves a final check to see how our shoulders are feeling. I can already see and feel my right shoulder just feeling phenomenal. So we're gonna just take a little roll. Oh, it felt like gliding through water. And even my tight side felt pretty glidey. So with that, we're gonna finish with just a final check and meditation. I want you to just close your eyes and take a couple of good deep breaths, maybe palms flip up towards the ceiling. You just find where it's comfortable for you, whether it's in a chair, against the wall, seated cross-legged, whatever feels right to you. And let's take a nice big inhale in through the nose. And exhale, blow out all that air. Notice if your head or back feels in tension. If it does, sit back just a little bit until you feel like your tailbone, your shoulders, and your head are stacked up on top of each other. Try and melt with every exhale, imagining that you're like an egg white and yolk running out of an eggshell. Just melt slowly and juicily to the floor. Okay, now I want you to start at the bottoms of your feet and just start to scan up. Notice if there's anything that seems to grab your attention, whether it's physically like, ooh, my muscles, or this doesn't feel right, or it seems to be something different, like, ooh, I feel there's a rock in the left side of my lower belly, or a burning across the inside of my rib cage. And as you breathe, continue to move through your body. Until you feel like you're pretty confident in the spaces that you feel things. And I want you to just drop into one of those spaces that you feel. If you feel nothing, just enjoy this feeling of lightness and freedom. Just keep breathing until everything seems to melt away and let go. I'm breathing my intentions for healing and restoration to you. My prayer for peace and finding the joy of being in each and every moment. And if it feels good to you, just stay in this space. Stay in that prayer, stay in your breathing. And if it feels complete, I want to thank you for joining me, coming to meet yourself here today and taking time for your self-practice. You are worth it. From all of us at Corporate Hippie Connection, we just wish you to live your most positive, passion-filled, glorious present life, fulfilling your purpose and growing to your very best self. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your week.